So, ladies and gentlemen, the 2-0 Buffalo Bills are set to face off against the 0-2 Jacksonville Jaguars on Monday Night Football in just a few short days. And here is my full preview and prediction. Say, for example, you're new to this channel. How I structure these videos is by first bringing on a representative that covers the Buffalo Bills opponent. On today's episode, we are bringing on Jordan DeLugo. He is a member of Generation Jag. He's going to be diving in to the injury report and then some of his takes on how he could see the Jaguars coming out on top with the victory. And then it transitions over into my full breakdown, breaking down everything and anything that has to do with the Jags offense, defense, keys for the Buffalo Bills to ultimately come out on top and go 3-0, plus a final score prediction. Goal for this video is 300 like buttons, and as many of you know, my goal is to have 50,000 subscribers by the end of the NFL season. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and turn on those bell notifications. Now, right before we dive into that, folks, I need to give a giant shout out to today's sponsor, and that just so happens to be Batavia Downs. Guys, the Legends and Stars Expo is just a couple of weeks away. That is right. Advanced tickets are already on sale all the way up through October 30th. Please hit that link in my description. Just look at all of the stars that are going to be there, ready to sign some of your memorabilia, chances to meet them, have conversations, famous Buffalo Sabres stars, Buffalo Bill stars, and much more. Particularly, I'm super excited about Bruce Smith being there. You never want to miss out on this opportunity. Now, again, the Legends and Stars Expo is going to be on November 2nd from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Get your advance tickets now. Link is in description. So without further ado, let's welcome Jordan to the channel. Ladies and gentlemen, as promised each and every single week, I like to go behind enemy lines and get a representative that covers their team very well, might I add, to unpack everything that we need to understand about the opponent the Buffalo Bills are facing. So when it came to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I cannot think of a better representative than our good friend Jordan. Jordan, how you doing today, man?
Doing well. Sun's shining. Jags are 0-2, but the sun has come out. Not only are the Jags 0-2, but it was raining for like 2 weeks straight in Jacksonville. So maybe the tide's
Nice.
turning. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
man, most definitely. I live in Florida too, surprisingly enough. As my dad woke up one morning when I was a kid in Buffalo, decided that he didn't want to shovel driveways anymore. So
Yeah.
I definitely understand what it's like out here in Florida. I'm actually like super far west in the Panhandle. I'm super close to Pensacola. Not sure if you've ever been out that way.
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah,
went to
man.
school in Tallahassee. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice. So I'm assuming you're a Florida State guy then?
I mean, I follow Florida State and Florida. I was raised a Gator. So
Okay. All right. Yeah, I was about
complicated.
to say it's been a pretty
Yeah.
painful first couple of weeks of football if that was the case, if you were a Seminoles
Yeah.
guy.
No doubt. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, Florida as well. So it's been
Yeah.
ugly.
Yeah.
It has
Yeah, for
been
sure.
ugly in Florida.
I can tell you what. Well, Jordan, once again, man, I really appreciate you setting aside a little bit of time for me right now. And I'll tell you what, man, listen, as far as the Jacksonville Jaguars are concerned, I understand that they dealt with a Trevor Lawrence injury at the back half of the season last year. And I feel like everybody, like in the media, crowned the Houston Texans as the favorite for the AFC South. But I don't think anybody would have expected the Jacksonville Jaguars to start off the way that they did. Particularly, I'm looking at Trevor Lawrence, right? I mean, he's almost seems very uncharacteristic. He's completing about 51% of his passes. It seems like his offensive line is not doing him any favors. Quick question for everyone out in Jacksonville. Have people started like raising those alarm bells right now? Or is this something that you see Trevor is going to clean up? This offense as a whole is going to clean up as the season sort of progresses.
There's always been some Trevor Lawrence detractors, but I think it's few and far between. I think the panic, if you will, is more surrounding coaching on
Okay.
the offensive side of the ball. A lot of folks have been wanting offensive coordinator Doug Press Taylor to be gone for a while. Uh,
Hmm.
Folks are sick of the Doug Peterson experience, and it has been a slow start to the season, certainly. But I think context is required when talking about football. And Trevor
Hmm.
Lawrence, when you talk about like adjusted EPA, he's 11th in the league right now. I think he's been
Yeah.
playing fine for the most part. I do think he
Hmm.
had a rough start against the Cleveland Browns last week. Finished
Hmm.
well in the second half, but it wasn't quite enough to get that dub. And then
Hmm.
against the Dolphins, when Trevor Lawrence was given the opportunity to throw the football through the first three quarters and the team had some balance, they were doing a good job. They kind of went into a shell in the fourth quarter for whatever reason, trying to just sit on that lead that they had after Travis Etienne's fumble and Tyreek Hill's touchdown. A two-play swing in that game that really changed things. But yeah, in the fourth quarter, the Jags just kind of went into a shell. They were only running the ball. So I think Trevor Lawrence has done well. I do think offensive coaching has been an issue, whether it be philosophical, whether it be individual play calling, whether it be operational,
Yeah.
getting the play call in, Trevor Lawrence communicating that to the rest of the offense, the offensive line, and Trevor Lawrence figuring out the protections. There's just been
Mhm.
a myriad of issues, drops by wide receivers as well. I think the Jaguars lead the league in drops already early in the season. So there's a
Mhm.
myriad of issues offensively for the Jaguars, but it's not an uncommon place for them to be in early on in the season. Like they have had
Mhm.
slow offensive starts the last couple years,
Yeah.
and they started 1-2 last year, started 3-7 the year before that. We'll see if they're
Mhm.
able to kind of flip the script as they have the last couple years. It's a
Mhm.
dangerous place to live in where you're having to kind of fight uphill after the first month of the season as they have been the last few years.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I look at the rest of the AFC South, and I mean, so I feel like the Colts and the Titans are in the exact same spot. So I probably agree with you. I wouldn't be sounding the alarms just yet. But as you mentioned, it sounds like that this seems to be a pattern of how the season starts off. Has anything been uncharacteristic to you though? Like something that's standing out? It's like, okay, like this is not right. I mean, one thing from me looking at, like, I see that Trevor is super, super productive in play action. But I've only seen 14 attempts in play action so far within the first two games of the season by itself. I'm looking at your run game, and it still seems relatively effective outside of that Travis Etienne fumble at the goal line week one. But I mean, we're looking at Etienne. I mean, he has 96 yards. He's averaging, like 5.6 per carry. And then same thing with Tank Bigsby. What's what's the deal there? Why do you think that you guys have been struggling establishing and just like sticking with the run and then also being able to do what Trevor needs to do to get into play action?
Yeah, I don't think the run game really has struggled overall. I mean,
Mhm.
ETN had a slow first game against the Dolphins. I thought he played fine against the Browns, who have a very strong defense. Tank
Mhm.
Bigsby was injured, or I don't know, he got injured his
Mhm.
shoulder early on against the Browns. And then
Yeah.
Doug Peterson said he was available, but he wasn't playing still. They had Dearness Johnson in there. So I think the run game's been fine. I honestly think the Jaguars have leaned too heavily on the rushing attack and not giving Trevor
Mhm.
Lawrence enough opportunities in the passing game, enough opportunities. Um, Play action wise, they've never been a super heavy play action team.
Mhm.
I think that they should lean into that more than they have. I
Yeah.
also just think trying to make big extrapolations or uh, sweeping takeaways from the first 2 weeks of an NFL season can lead you astray, right? Like if we looked
Yeah.
at everything right now, I think you'd say like it's going to be the Saints, Bucks, and Vikings competing for the NFC crown.
Crazy. It's wild.
So I just think it's early, and
Yeah.
to make any sweeping changes is or sweeping, takes is
Mhm.
it's a little early for that in my opinion. But
Yeah.
there's no question the Jaguars operationally, execution wise, coaching, play calling from an offensive standpoint, they've got to do a lot better than they have.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. And I mean, speaking of things that might be too early, what is the injury report looking like going into Monday night? I'm sure we'll probably have a more definitive answer later on in this afternoon and as the game gets closer. But are there any key players that may be a game time decision or you're already planning on playing without on Monday night?
Yeah, so Tyson Campbell won't be out there, the Jaguars starting outside cornerback who got a bag this offseason, very good player. He's not going to be available. He's on the short-term IR. He'll be out till at least week 6. Evan Ingram sustained, I think it's more of a minor hamstring injury, which is also what Tyson Campbell has, in pregame warmups before the Cleveland Browns game, the
I
Jaguars
remember
starting
seeing
tight
that.
end.
Yeah.
So Doug Peterson said earlier this week that he's week to week. Not sure if that means he'll have a chance at playing or not against the Buffalo Bills, but that's somebody to keep an eye on for sure. One of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets. And then
Yeah.
also defensively, Darnell Savage missed last week, who's the Jaguars' kind of starting nickel, versatile chess piece in the secondary. He had a quad injury that it's not believed to be a long-term situation, but again, somebody to monitor there. Other than that, in
Mhm.
the starting lineup, I don't think you're looking at anything, but we haven't had an injury report yet this week.
Yeah.
Obviously, things are a little delayed with the Monday Night Football. I think
Yeah.
you'll get your first injury report tomorrow for both
Mhm.
teams,
Yeah.
and those are the major ones I'd be looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I mean, honestly, this year has been crazy with injuries already. It's been a weird year, like as you alluded to. I mean, I really don't think anybody could have correctly predicted that the top two quarterbacks in QBR would be Derek Carr and Kyler Murray going into the
Yeah.
2024 season, or the Cardinals and the Saints being the most efficient offenses. It's certainly a weird year, it's for sure. It like really almost looks like
I was in on the
1980s
Cardinals
football.
offense. I would like to say that.
You
Saints,
were. All right. All
not as
right.
much. I
All
was
right.
so
Hey.
worried about the Saints and their tackle situation,
Yeah.
but, obviously Kubiak coming in there has done wonders for that
Yeah.
offense.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, we'll definitely keep everyone updated there. Who knows? Are they 2-0 for real or 2-0 frauds? That's for sure. But um next question, right? Like I'm sure you've been unpacking the matchup, and when you look at this Buffalo Bills side on both sides of the ball, same thing with the Jaguars, are there any matchups that you are going to be watching very closely? Some matchups that you think that the Jaguars can get their share of wins?
Well, when it comes to their share of wins, I think Brian Thomas Jr. has been virtually uncoverable down the field, whether it be Jalen Ramsey, whether it be
Yeah.
Greg Newsome last week. Didn't
Yeah.
really have matchups with Denzel Ward. I think that the Jaguars wanted to stay away from that.
Mhm.
Rightfully so. Denzel Ward's one of the best corners in the league. Um, but yeah, I think that if they're able to get him free down the field, that's going to be a big issue for the Buffalo Bills. They've been
Mhm.
able to connect on some deep shots every week, but they're not dialing it up a ton. I think
Mhm.
you would like to see, if you're a Jags fan, certainly him to get more targets. Like you've seen some rookies have absolutely monster games. Malik Neighbors, Marvin Harrison Jr., where they're getting targeted a ton. I think that that Brian Thomas Jr. only has 8 targets through the first 2 games total. So you want to
Yeah.
see that uptick certainly. I think that the Jaguars linebackers are playing fantastic football, and so if they can mitigate James Cook and Ray Davis and Josh Allen's legs, perhaps you have an opportunity to force them to become one dimensional. I think that's something the Jaguars should certainly be aiming at doing, and that's the goal every week, right? For every team, stop the run, make them throw the football. But I
Yeah.
think that could be key for the Jaguars with the way their linebackers are playing right now.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely, man. I mean, it sucks because for some reason this Jaguars team has had the Buffalo Bills number. Fun story, back when Urban Meyer was your head coach, I brought my dad down there for the Bills and Jaguars matchup. It was his birthday, and I said, "Oh my god, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars led by Urban Meyer. This should be an easy win. My dad's going to leave with a
Yeah.
smile." And all I remember is losing 9-6. It was one of the most painful games I have seen in quite some time. And I was also pissed off when you guys ended up getting Brian Thomas Jr. He was the wide receiver that I had circled like on my big board. I needed that guy to be a Buffalo Bill. And he has been fun to watch so far for this season. Massive upgrade from Calvin Ridley from what I've seen so far.
Yeah, I think so. And just from a physical skill set standpoint, like Calvin Ridley and Brian Thomas Jr. don't really compare at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah.
Thomas Jr. is bigger, faster, stronger,
Yeah.
more ups, bigger catch radius, everything from a physical standpoint. And you've seen the quickness and the suddenness in his routes as well to be able to create separation. Now, the Jaguars offensive line has to give Trevor Lawrence the time to find him, and Trevor Lawrence
Yeah.
has to Trevor Lawrence had a opportunity to hit him for a touchdown in the red zone in the second quarter last week, but I think because maybe he's getting a little worried about the offensive line, he bailed early to the
Yeah.
left and the throw would have been to the right, which is where he was looking before he bailed, but there really wasn't pressure coming in on him. So, one of those things where everybody's got to do better for the Jacksonville Jaguars if they want to get where they want as an offense, where they can be as an offense. But I do think that Brian Thomas Jr. being able to trade back and still land him was
Mhm.
quite the coup for the Jaguars.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. Now, like when you look at this offensive line as well, I mean, so far Trevor has had 7 sacks so far. Who's the weak link like on that offensive line? Like who is that one player on the line that like you're absolutely nervous about going into Buffalo on Monday night?
Well, one thing that can be said is I think that each member of the offensive line has had their fair share of issues. Which, if you
Okay.
looked at this offensive line individually, you wouldn't say that any of these guys are poor pass protectors. You
Hmm.
look at each individual piece and you say, well, this should work in pass protection. They should be, you know, average at worst in pass pro. They're certainly not a great run blocking group, but uh, the surprise has been the two tackles and their play. Um, Cam Robinson was going up against Miles Garrett last week, so everybody's going to
It's a
struggle in
tough
that
ask.
regard,
It's a
right?
tough ask. Yeah.
And he mostly played well throughout the Miami Dolphins loss, but he did have struggles in the fourth quarter, and he's had a lot of struggles in the run department. Anytime they ask him to get on the move, it just hasn't looked crisp. But
Yeah.
I think he can survive in pass protection. I think he's playing all right. Anton Harrison, though, has been the bigger surprise, the second year right tackle for the Jaguars, who was a first round pick in 2023. Um, he had a fantastic rookie year in pass protection, and he's struggled so far in both games in pass pro. So I
Okay.
think you look at the individual pieces, and maybe you feel like it could come together, but so far it has not.
Okay. Got it. All right. And last but not least, give us our keys for the Jacksonville Jaguars to defeat the Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football and wrap it up with a final score prediction. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I think for the Jaguars to do anything offensively, they got to get out of their own way. And
Mhm.
so, as much as the Bills have a talented defense, Von
Mhm.
Miller's starting to play like Von Miller, Gregory
Finally.
Rousseau, Ed Oliver, like good football players. Obviously, the linebacker position isn't what you would want it to be because of Matt Milano's injury, but still a very well coached unit. Some good secondary players. Christian Benford's been playing very well. Rasul Douglas is a tough guy. Some new pieces at safety, certainly, but I think Cole Bishop is a good young player, and they're well coached on that side of the ball. Um,
Mhm.
I think you look at if Trevor Lawrence can get comfortable in this game, he can have a good game against the Bills. We've seen that, uh, quite frankly, a couple
Mhm.
times already. And
True.
I think defensively, like I said, it's all about can you stop the run and force it to be
Mhm.
the Josh Allen throws 35 times, 40 times in this game. And they're also going to have better play from their safeties. We haven't talked about that yet. Andre Cisco and Antonio Johnson have both been missing a lot of tackles. And so if you're going to try to force it to be that type of game where Josh Allen has to throw that many times, those two safeties are going to have to do a little bit better in support with their angles, with their tackling. And so, yeah, I would say those are the keys for the Jaguars. And until I see this offense get out of its own way, I'm not going to predict that the Jaguars are going to win this football game. I do think it should be relatively close because I think
Mhm.
the Jags defense, coached by Ryan Nielsen, the way they're executing has been pretty impressive so far. I think that Tyson Campbell not playing would be a bigger issue against a team that has a more established wide receiver one.
Mhm.
And I love Khalil Shakir and Dalton Kincaid, and I'm a fan of Keon Coleman as well. But
Yeah.
your guys that are really winning a lot right now are more in the intermediate middle areas of the field versus winning outside consistently. So I do
True.
think that they have the advantage, certainly, with Josh Allen being the quarterback, and I would probably put it at 24. The Jags have been close in both of these games that they've lost. I do think the Bills are the best team that they've played, but maybe some matchups favor the Jags a little bit more. I would put it at Bills 24, Jaguars 20.
Got it. Got it.
Disappointing loss for the Jaguars to fall to 0-3, and then you have to go face the Houston Texans in week 4 in Houston.
Well, hey, man, listen, I know that we're all rooting for you to take care of business against the Texans, that's for sure. But hey, man, listen, I sincerely appreciate you setting aside some time and coming on and chatting with us today. Folks, do me a favor, go subscribe to my boy's YouTube channel. It's in the description right now, and stay tuned. It's time for my full breakdown. So, a very informative interview and a ballsy prediction there from Jordan. Thank you so much for coming on the channel again, man. And so his YouTube channel is linked in the description. Sincerely appreciate you setting aside some time for me this afternoon. So, guys, as promised, let's go on ahead and dive into this Buffalo Bills and Jacksonville Jaguars game. As many of you know, they have been a thorn in our side. I always like starting off with this story. It was my dad's birthday a couple of years ago, and it was the Urban Meyer head coached Jacksonville Jaguars. And I saw it on the schedule, And I said, hey, Dad, you know what? Let's go down to Jacksonville and celebrate your birthday. This Jaguars team's absolutely horrible. We're obviously going to walk away with a win. It's just going to be birthday vibes all over the place. And what happens? The Buffalo Bills lose 9-6. It was one of the most painful drives back home I have ever had to deal with in my entire life. And things obviously didn't get much better as the years progressed. We ended up losing out in London just last year, where we lost out on Daquan Jones and Matt Milano. So this team has just been super annoying. I'm not going to lie to you. And I want this win more than I think any Bills fan could possibly want it. One of the good things about this is that the Jacksonville Jaguars will be finally traveling up to Highmark Stadium. So hopefully that gives us some sort of an edge. However, that doesn't mean that we're just going to stick with this video via hope exclusively. We have to understand what we're going to be going up against. And there's no lie, like, this Jacksonville Jaguars team has not looked the same. I understand that this team had to suffer with a Trevor Lawrence injury toward the back half of the season, where they ultimately ended up missing the playoffs. And although everyone thought the Houston Texans were going to run away with the AFC South, we at least thought that the Jaguars would have kept things competitive. They were so close in beating the Miami Dolphins week 1. And so unfortunately on week 2, the Cleveland Browns defense was just too much for this team to handle. And I'll tell you what, we have to start off with Trevor Lawrence, because I think that it all starts with the quarterback. And he, quite frankly, has not been performing like the first overall pick that he was just a couple of years ago, particularly. I mean, thinking about Trevor Lawrence, starting off, he's gone 26 for 51 of his pass attempts. That is 51% completion rate. 382 yards in general, only 1 touchdown, 0 interceptions. So at least he's taking care of the football. He averages 1 turnover-worthy play per game, so opportunities are going to be there. And the thing is that this dude has been getting sacked, my friends. 7 sacks have been allowed from this Jacksonville Jaguars offensive line so far. We heard what Jordan had to say about they thought that this offensive line would be somewhat serviceable in pass protection, but it just doesn't seem to be the case. Regardless, with Trevor Lawrence, he's taking 2.72 seconds on average to throw the football. He's only had to scramble a couple of times this year, 3 times to be exact. And his average yards per attempt is 7.5 yards downfield. So all in all, it's pretty crazy that Trevor Lawrence has started off this season that way, especially when you see how the Buffalo Bills handled Miami last week in Miami by itself. Cleveland, I can certainly give him a pass, because I don't care who your offensive lineman is. Not many people are going to be successful against Myles Garrett, but things get deeper at this point, because as we transition over into Trevor Lawrence, I love breaking down pressure metrics and then also passing concepts. And I think a lot of these things are telling. When I break down whether or not a quarterback performs better while he's kept clean, while he's under pressure, blitzed, etc., there's normally staggering differences. 9 times out of 10, when he's kept clean, like, we're seeing QBs complete close to like high 60s, 70% of their passes. And when they're under pressure, it's significantly lower. Nothing new here. But folks, within the first 2 games, his numbers are pretty much on par with everything else. When he's been kept clean, 54.1% of his passes have been completed. Under pressure, 42.9%. Not blitz, 51.59%. And 50% completion percentage when he is blitzed. So overall, this offensive line is just not doing him any favors. And surprisingly enough, you would think that when Calvin Ridley was off the team, so that they would have gotten over the whole drop issue that plagued them last year, but it also doesn't seem to be the case. Brian Thomas Jr. recorded a drop. Kirk as well has almost been a non-factor. So Trevor just really hasn't been the guy that we expected him to be. Many of you know that I have never been high on the quarterback prospect. I think he's a bust, quite frankly. But I was not expecting it to be this bad through the first 2 games of the season. I sincerely wasn't. And a lot of it, which makes me scratch my head, is the fact when you have a QB that is wildly efficient at play action, this offensive coordinator is only allowing him 14 attempts at play action, where he's completing 71.4% of his passes. It's not like this Jacksonville Jaguars team is not effectively running the football, as we'll see as we break down the rest of their offense. But only 14 attempts at play action is absolutely wild. Why would you take that away from a quarterback? And then afterwards, non-play action, as we've said, 43.2% of his passes, 16 for 37. and only 6 screen attempts. So a lot of Jacksonville Jaguars fans are maybe upset with the offensive coordinator, how they're putting things together. Some people are already starting to get sick of Doug Peterson, but for the first 2 weeks of this season, this offense has been broken. And so it's not just Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, there's some key players that we need to be able to discuss, particularly with their offense in general. And when you look at their offense in general, of course, they're allowing 15 points per game. Okay. That's actually pretty damn good. But the problem is that they went up against the Miami Dolphins, who we all saw struggled putting points on the board for the first 2 weeks. Afterwards, they're allowing 295 yards per game, okay, from opposing defenses. Third down conversions, only 26% converted there, and red zone scoring less than 50%, which is toward the bottom of the league by itself. So it's all execution for the most part based off of the defenses that they have been facing off against. As I alluded to earlier, this run game honestly has not been that bad. I just don't know why they have not made that more of a focal point into the offense. 5.4 yards per rush. That's good enough for seventh in the league. Obviously led by Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, who got hurt last week, I want to say, and 127.5 yards per game. This Jacksonville Jaguars rush offense can certainly get it. I mean, especially with Travis Etienne and with Tank Bigsby, who is more of their north-south runner. He absolutely cleans house as that guy that's running right in between the defensive tackles. So we're going to need a massive game from Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones to bottle that up. But like I said, they're really trying to get Trevor in the pass game going because of some of the names that they have on this roster so far. And the 3 names that we need to look out for, obviously, is Brian Thomas Jr. Many Buffalo Bills fans were salivating at the fact that he could potentially be a Buffalo Bill during the draft. You have Gabe Davis. I know that we all remember that guy. And then we also have Christian Kirk, who surprisingly has not really been implemented into this offense. I mean, he's caught 2 of 7 attempts already and only 29 yards by itself. And so as Jordan alluded to, it sounds like Evan Ingram, one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets, is questionable leading up into Monday. He hurt himself during pregame warmups against the Cleveland Browns. I'm not sure if Doug Peterson is going to throw him out there with a lingering hamstring injury, but those are the 3 that we're going to have to look out for going into the game on Monday for the Buffalo Bills defensively. Now, obviously, we know exactly what Gabe Davis is all about. He's not very fast. He's more of a 50-50 ball kind of guy, has drop issues here and there. But shout out Gabe. I mean, he hasn't recorded the drop all season yet. But Brian Thomas Jr. is the one that I really want to take a look at, right? He was cooking Jalen Ramsey on week 1. Denzel Ward obviously ended up getting the best of him for the vast majority of the snaps, but this is a very talented young receiver. And so Trevor Lawrence loves stretching the field with this young man. His average yards per reception is about 23 yards from the line of scrimmage. So we know exactly how he is going to be utilized. So we better hope, whether or not that it's Benford, whether or not that it's Rasul Douglas, they need to go on ahead and make sure that they match up with this young man one-on-one effectively. And based off of what we saw from Benford and what we saw from Rasul Douglas, they did a fantastic job in perhaps shutting down the best wide receiver duo in the NFL on Thursday. We need to keep this consistent. The biggest issue, of course, folks, with the Jacksonville Jaguars is hands down that offensive line. I teased it already. And with Trevor Lawrence, dude got sacked 7 times, 14 plus pressures, not doing him any favors. It might have to do with the fact that he's almost borderline babysitting the football. But at the end of the day, this Buffalo Bills team should have no issue getting to the quarterback. He's not one to scramble outside of the pocket. He wants to live inside of the pocket. And when I'm looking at some of these matchups from this Jaguars offensive line and Gregory Rousseau, Von Miller, who leads the team in pressures, thank the Lord, and then Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones, this is a matchup that I absolutely love. So keys for the Buffalo Bills defense to take care of the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. Number 1, send it home from the pass rush side of things. Don't fix what's not broken. I'm expecting to have a huge game from all 4 of our defensive linemen. Hopefully be able to be a massive piece in our run defense as well. Shut down Tank Bigsby. And this is a matchup we cannot not take advantage of. Get to the damn quarterback. And dare I say, it doesn't matter how we do it, all right? Whether or not that it's organic pressure, whether or not that it's blitzes, with Trevor Lawrence's numbers, virtually are the same, regardless of what sort of pressure strategy is put into place. And so need this defensive line to get it done. Secondly, from the Buffalo Bills defense, obviously need big games from our perimeter corners. Christian Kirk, right now, he has not been utilized heavily in this Jaguars offense as of yet. Don't make the mistake of thinking that they are not going to try to get him involved in this game. They are going to test our linebackers, folks. If you are not paying attention, both Taron Johnson and Terrell Bernard are not going to be playing on Monday Night Football. So this is going to be a Spectre game. This is going to be a Morrow game, okay? If we're putting out dime packages here, if we're putting Cole Bishop, Damar Hamlin, and Taylor Rapp out there as safeties, only running with one linebacker, we have to do it because my thought process is that they are going to be utilizing a lot of Christian Kirk in the short, intermediate, middle of the field. I'm not afraid of Brian Thomas Jr. out on the perimeter. I trust Rasul Douglas or Christian Benford to lock that down. I can almost tell you exactly what the Jaguars are planning on doing with the pass game. And third, once again, make your tackles. Don't allow yards after the catch, although this team really isn't that scary in that category. But again, this is going to be a trend. Make your damn tackles. So we should have no problem in being able to stop this offensive output who is clearly struggling, particularly at home. Now, next up, we have to take a look at the Jacksonville Jaguars defense, who, like I alluded to a bit earlier in this video already, not bad. I mean, folks, like 19 points per game, that is good enough for 8th. And granted, whether or not you want to say that the Dolphins have been struggling scoring points and the Cleveland Browns have been struggling scoring points, still very impressive. 348.5 yards per game. That is 22nd in the league. On third down stops, all right, they're stopping 33% of those. It's good enough for 18. Fourth down conversions, they are allowing 60% of those at 14. And red zone scoring, if you walk into the red zone, folks, you're scoring. They are literally at 26th in the league at 66.7%. So when I look at this overall team, obviously you need to take a look at their pass rush. Joshua Hines-Allen is a thorn in the Buffalo Bills side, okay? I have PTSD from what this Jags pass rush has done to Josh Allen in the past. But the last couple of times that we have faced this team, we have been dealing with some injuries, and so on the offensive line unit. So hopefully this year is different. Just make sure that your protections are called appropriately, and Josh Allen is Josh Allen during this game. Many of you are like, oh, Dan, let's run the damn ball. James Cook and Ray Davis have been having a hell of a season so far. Well, I would say not so fast. This Jaguars team is very good at stopping the run. The front seven, linebackers specifically, are all ranked very high in PFF, so run defense by itself. So to be completely honest with you folks, we are going to have to win this game with our pass attack. We're just going to have to. They have a pretty significant injury on their perimeter corner. So losing out on Tyson Campbell onto the IR, he's not going to be back until about week 6, week 7. That is going to be ideal. So maybe this is a game where Keon Coleman finally ends up getting implemented. There are a lot of opportunities on this Jags defense, specifically within the secondary. On the safety side of things, they have been missing tackles left and right. If you check out their PFF scores, they are struggling almost uncharacteristically. So what Josh is going to have to do is that he is really going to have to bully the perimeter corners and also those safeties, because those linebackers are no slouches and the pass rush is not going to be able to give them a lot of time. I obviously want to see if we can win the game again by the James Cook show, establishing play action. But as much as I hate to say it, this is going to be a game where Josh is going to be throwing about 27 to 29 times during this game. 27 to 29 times. And that's okay because we can take advantage of it. So the overall keys for the Buffalo Bills offense to get the best of the Jacksonville Jaguars defense is really attack the intermediate of the field by itself. While the linebackers are fantastic in run defense, I think they can get got in pass coverage, okay? Let's leverage and take advantage of the fact that the safeties have been struggling missing their tackles. I'm seeing a lot of Khalil Shakir. I'm seeing a lot of Dalton Kincaid for this first matchup by itself. I'm loving the mismatches here. Run game, try to establish it. I'm not necessarily sure that we will be very successful. I don't think that we're going to see another, 4.8 yards per carry from James Cook or Ray Davis. I would be happy for that to be the case, but I really think that Josh is going to have to win with his arm on this one. 3, again, this is going to be a narrative that will remain uniform. Josh, give me one more game with 0 interceptions just so I can flex across the internet. I beg you. And so then 4, when you are in the red zone, take full advantage of all of those opportunities. This is one of the worst defenses in red zone protection. Take advantage and take points. So, folks, that's going to have to do it for my full preview and prediction of the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Buffalo Bills. Final score prediction, I am going to go Buffalo Bills 24, Jacksonville Jaguars 17. I don't trust the Jags not to shoot themselves in the foot offensively. I think the Jags start off 0-3, and the Buffalo Bills end up walking out with a game that's probably going to start off as like super anxiously, but I think that by the end of the game, we will hit our stride. I can certainly see the Jaguars defensively causing us fits for the first quarter and then us figuring it out as the game goes along. Please sound off in the comment section. Let me know your final score prediction once again. And also make sure you subscribe and turn on bell notifications. Don't you dare miss out on my live game reaction on Monday Night Football. I love hanging out with you guys during that, and we will see you then. Thank you so much for tuning in. And before I let you go, you better always remember, let's go Buffalo.